In this video, we're going to look at the process of passing laws in America. America uses a presidential system that is based on the separation of powers. The president sits in the executive branch separate from the legislative branch. So the president does not have a direct role in initiating the passage of legislation. Laws get passed by the legislature, and then the president can weigh in. Here's how that looks. There are two chambers in the legislature. There is a House of Representatives and a Senate. Members of the House serve 2-year terms. In the Senate, they serve for 6 years. Passing a law requires approval from each of these divisions. The House of Representatives has to vote to advance the bill. The Senate then has to vote to advance the bill. And lastly, the president chooses to sign that bill or not. It's got to go through all 3 stages in order for it to become a law. Now, it gets more complicated because of the 2-party system in the United States. It is possible that different parties could control different branches. When one party controls the presidency, the Senate, and the House, that is called unified control or unified government. It is considerably easier to pass laws when one party controls all 3 mechanisms. It can get more challenging during a period of divided government or divided control. This is when control of the chambers or the White House is split between the different parties. Now you've got an extra hurdle. It's hard enough to get it through the 2 chambers and then the presidency. Well, now you've got 2 different parties to consider as well. The actual process of passing laws is complicated. There's a lot of different steps, and it has to follow these steps in each chamber. A bill will get introduced, it'll get debated at committee, it might get amended, and then back to the floor for a final vote. That happens in 2 chambers. Now that's the theoretical version. In practice, there are a lot of different steps that get in the way. And in the American system, these are called veto points. Veto points are spots in a legislative process where things can stop. In the House of Representatives, there's 2 ways that can happen. One is on the floor. So the floor means the final vote. If a bill comes before a final vote, it could get defeated. That is one potential way to stop a bill from getting passed. The Speaker of the House, the leader in the House, could also choose not to schedule a vote at all. That would effectively kill the bill. And lastly, it could get bottled up in committee, which means at the committee stage, the chairman of the committee could decide that they just don't want to pass the bill and they won't even bring it up for a vote. So there's 3 different ways at least that something could get stopped in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, the same thing could happen. The leader of the chamber, the majority leader, could decide not to hold a vote. That would kill the bill. They could also decide to hold a vote and it gets defeated. That's another way. Again, the Senate has the same committee system as the House. The bill could get bottled up in committee. Those are all veto points. Now, the Senate has an additional veto point called the filibuster. Now, in history, what the filibuster meant was that any given senator could take the floor and keep the floor as long as they wanted. They would essentially talk indefinitely to try and delay the passage of a bill. You basically talked until the opposition gave up. Here's an example of a Senator, Rand Paul from Kentucky, doing a 12-hour speech on the floor to try and delay passage of a bill. In the contemporary Senate, if you want to invoke the filibuster, all you need to do is send an email to the leader saying, I demand to filibuster this bill, which means you are invoking a 60-vote threshold. In a motion to proceed, there's 2 things that need to happen to the Senate. You have to, in order to get to that vote, it only takes 51 votes to pass a bill. You have to pass a motion to proceed. Now, if a senator says they want to filibuster that triggers the 60-vote threshold. So you first need 61 votes in order to get to the final floor vote. So that's an additional hurdle in the Senate, and it's a very high hurdle to cross. That's called a supermajority threshold, when you need more than 50% to effectively do something. If you can get through that, if you can get through the House, you get through floor action, you pass a floor vote, you can get to the Senate, you overcome 60 votes to get to the final vote, and then on that final vote you get 51 votes, goes to the president's desk. Now the president can decide to veto the bill, say, nope, I'm not going to sign this. go back and try again, or the president can do something that's called a pocket veto. That basically means they don't sign the bill, they wait until the session of Congress expires, and then the bill expires with it. So there are a lot of different points in this process where a bill could get stopped. Lots of veto points. Much easier to stop a bill from passing than it is to actually pass one. And that's how sort of the reality differs from the theory. In theory, this is a long and difficult process, and members of Congress and the members of the Senate, they don't want to cast a lot of votes because every vote that they cast could be used against them in a campaign ad or an attack ad. So what often happens is the leaders of the respective chambers will negotiate the bills in secret. They will skip the committee stage. It's actually very rare to get bipartisanship where both parties agree. But once the two chambers have agreed on the foundation, then it'll bring it to a vote. You don't see many votes until they know it's going to pass. People don't want to cast votes unless it's meaningful. And so rather than go through that process, typically the leaders in the House and the Senate will figure out what each other would accept, and even in consultation with the White House. Once they get agreement on what would be acceptable, then they bring it to a vote. You don't want to bring anything to a vote unless you are assured that it's going to win. So that's how this process has evolved to try and get past all those veto points. Very difficult to pass laws in the American system.